This next story is a little bit rough. It involves the opioid epidemic, the opioid crisis. You may not have seen this. This has been going on for a long period of time. There's a company out there that goes by the name of McKinsey. McKinsey is a global consulting company. Very, very good at what they do, very expensive, very thorough. They're basically world renowned. They were working with another company called Purdue. Purdue was the manufacturer of OxyContin, a very serious opioid that has resulted in many, many deaths throughout this country. Many more people addicted to that drug will later go to heroin and some of the harder drugs as a result. When they can no longer get this, that's where they turn. And for almost 2 decades, they were running hog wild around this country. They were selling drugs and just handing them out like Skittles to everybody. Today, McKinsey entered into a settlement, or this might have been yesterday, where they're going to pay for some of the damage that they caused. This article comes from statnews.com. McKinsey agrees to a $573 million settlement over advice given to Purdue and other opioid makers. So Purdue was the manufacturer. McKinsey was basically a consulting and marketing company. They're a consulting firm. They reached a $573 million settlement. 47 states over its work advising Purdue and other drug makers to aggressively market opioid painkillers. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I know people who are in jail or prison for these types of offenses. In other words, if you would have sold a drug to somebody illegally, given out a prescription drug, and they would have caught you with this, it would be a possession of narcotic, possession of dangerous drug, depending on the drug, and you would be charged with a class 4 felony here in Arizona. The presumptive sentence on that is 2.5 years in prison. Okay, so that's kind of the baseline. Just think about that. Think about what your average drug dealer person who's got a drug addict or somebody who's just in possession of drugs, what the penalties would be for them as we go through this. The first national settlement to emerge from the massive opioid litigation filed by state, county, and local governments against opioid manufacturers over the last several years. This deal is the first to result in a substantial payment to the states to address the epidemics. The fund will be used for prevention, treatment, and recovery efforts. About $573 million. McKinsey contributed to the opioid crisis by selling marketing schemes and consulting services, according to the court documents. We're going to go through some of them. As one example, the consulting giant helped Purdue design plans to, quote, turbocharge OxyContin sales during the height of the opioid crisis. The consulting firm dubbed the plan Evolve to Excellence, which significantly increased sales. The McKinsey team advised Purdue to consider paying rebates of up to $14,000 to health insurers for each patient harmed by Oxy in order to maintain those crucial business relationships. They calculated Oxy was involved in just 4% of overdose deaths or opioid use disorder diagnoses and estimated there were about 50 such incidents per 1 million people covered by the health insurers. They advised Purdue to focus on higher, more lucrative dosages. They increased sales rep visits to high-volume opioid prescribers. They wanted to target doctors with specific messaging to convince them to prescribe more to patients and to deliver Oxy directly to patients through mail-order pharmacies to circumvent the retail pharmacy restrictions on high-dose, suspicious prescriptions. So just massive amounts of drug peddling. And they knew what they were doing. Okay, look at these numbers. They calculated what the damage was. I think they underestimated it probably by a factor of 5, 10, I don't know. 4% of overdose deaths, opioid use disorder diagnoses, 50 such incidents per 1 million people. So they knew what the numbers were. They knew that people were getting addicted to this stuff, and they sold it anyways. And they wanted to sell more. And they went in and they said, hey, what if we just mail it to people? Then we don't have to go to a pharmacy. It's a pain to get the drug addicts into the pharmacy. Let's just ship it right to their house and bill the insurers. They want to target doctors with specific messages to prescribe more drugs for everybody. As part of the settlement, McKinsey is required to turn over thousands of documents detailing its work for Purdue and other opioid companies for public disclosure online, which I'm happy for the internet to get a hold of. The agreement also imposes court-ordered ethics rules that McKinsey must implement, including strict company-wide standards for document retention, conflict disclosures on state contracts. This consulting firm also agreed to stop advising companies on potentially dangerous Schedule II, Schedule III narcotics. We're going to get into some of the documents. We're going to get into the original complaint that was filed by the state of Massachusetts that was joined by 46 other states suing them for some of the harm. Then we're going to look at the settlement agreement. Before we do, I want to show you what their press release says. What does McKinsey have to say about this? This news article came out. Settlement was entered. They responded. Then we're going to get into what the original allegations were. Okay, let's take a look at this first. McKinsey reaches agreements with 49 state attorneys general to resolve investigations into its past work. McKinsey Company, this is posted on their website. Settlement funds will immediately contribute to the state's opioid relief efforts. Thanks, guys. McKinsey Company today reached a settlement, 5 territories, 49 states, related to the past advisory work. Nearly $600 million, what the states will use to address the impact of the opioid epidemic in their communities. McKinsey has reaffirmed the commitment it made 2 years ago, when they first got investigated, to not advise any clients on opioid-related business. As part of the agreement, the Attorney General recognized McKinsey's, this is where they're puffing themselves up, their good faith and responsible corporate citizenship in reaching this resolution. Oh, that's nice. McKinsey believes its past work was lawful and has denied allegations to the contrary. The settlement agreements themselves contain no admission of wrongdoing or liability. So we're going to read through what the original complaint was. You can decide if that's accurate or not. Kevin Sneeder, the global managing partner of McKinsey, said, quote, "We chose to resolve this matter in order to provide fast, meaningful support to communities across the United States." Isn't that just swell? What a guy. "We deeply regret that we did not adequately acknowledge the tragic consequences of the epidemic unfolding in our communities. With this agreement, we hope to be a part of the solution to the opioid crisis in the U.S." What a guy. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you for that. Thanks for shipping out $573 million to the rest of America. Well done 2 years ago as a result of a highly litigated settlement agreement in which your attorneys fought for zero liability, no admission of wrongdoing, no acceptance of any responsibility for it. You said your past work was lawful. You denied any allegations to the contrary. All right, let's look at what the original complaint looks like. Okay, this is what Massachusetts sued them for a couple of years ago. The original complaint. Now, this is just a complaint. These aren't proven allegations. But this is a public record. It's a public document. You can go find it on the internet. This is what the state of Massachusetts was saying that they did. So you can, look, I appreciate a good defense more than anybody. I understand that you're innocent until proven guilty. I believe in that standard. They just entered into a settlement agreement and they finagled their way out of accepting any responsibility. Let's see what Massachusetts has to say. And you should acknowledge this as a viewer. This is not something that they are agreeing. They're denying this, that any of this is true. And it's not in the settlement agreement. So this is not fact according to that final result of this case. This is just what the original allegations were from Massachusetts. All right, you can take them with a grain of salt if you want, or you can take them as fact if you want, if you prefer. Here's what the complaint says. Let's visit this. The plaintiff of Massachusetts bring this action against McKinsey Company for violating the Consumer Protection Act out of the state of Massachusetts. The Commonwealth brings this action for consulting services that it provided to opioid companies in connection with designing the company's marketing plans and programs that helped and caused and contributed to the opioid crisis. McKinsey sold its ideas to Purdue Pharma for more than 15 years, from 2004 to 2019, including before and after Purdue's 2007 guilty plea for felony misbranding. So they got in trouble, Purdue did, and they just kept on selling them for another 12 years. Kept working for them. McKinsey advised Purdue and other manufacturers to target prescribers who write the most prescriptions for the most patients and thereby make the most money for McKinsey's clients. Here's some of what they did. In 2013, McKinsey conducted another analysis of Oxy's growth for Purdue, and they laid out new plans to increase the sales of Oxy. Among the key components McKinsey's plan adopted by Purdue were A, to focus sales calls on high-volume opioid prescribers, including those who wrote as many as 25 times as many OxyContin scripts as their lower-volume counterparts. They identified the doctors who were writing these things like Skittles, and they went and sold them more. B, they removed sales representatives' discretion in targeting prescribers. So go get them. C, focus Purdue's marketing messaging to titrate to higher, more lucrative dosages. So you start on a small dose, work your way up. Higher the dose, higher the cost of the pill, more money you make. Just slowly, once you get them addicted, slowly raise the price. Significantly increase the number of sales visits to high volume prescribers. So just start banging on the doctor's doors. E, create an alternative model for how patients receive OxyContin, including direct distribution to patients and pharmacies to help address product access problem. It's hard to get it. When a large pharmacy chain recognized this and took steps to scrutinize suspicious opioid orders, McKinsey stressed to Purdue's owners the, quote, need to take action. They're going to start limiting the distribution of this. We got to take action on this urgent issue affecting Oxy. McKinsey told Purdue's owners to engage in senior level discussions with the pharmacy chain to increase efforts with patient advocacy groups to clamor against dispensing limits and accelerate considerations of an alternative distribution channel, such as delivering them directly through mail order pharmacies. After their platform, McKinsey continued to work with Purdue, including on a project that identified the growing addiction crisis, this will make you sick, as a profit-making opportunity. McKinsey continued to work with Purdue, including on a project that identified the growing addiction crisis as a profit-making opportunity. These people are sick. McKinsey told Purdue that it should strive to become a provider across the spectrum of drug abuse and addiction because of the opportunities it presented. McKinsey advised Purdue to get into the manufacturing and marketing of opioid rescue and treatment medications in order to profit from the realities of dependence, addiction, and misuse. Indeed, in 2018, Purdue owner Dr. Richard Sackler received a patent for a drug to treat opioid addiction. They were distributing the drugs, getting everybody addicted. Then, when they were addicted, they provided the treatment. Treatment medications, opioid addiction drugs. Some of the most evil people on the planet, as far as I can tell. Paragraph 23, subsequently, in the wake of hundreds of thousands of opioid deaths and thousands of lawsuits, McKinsey proposed a plan for Purdue's exit from the opioid business, whereby Purdue would continue selling opioids as a way to fund new Purdue ventures. According to McKinsey, the change was necessary because of the negative events that materially compromised the Purdue brand. Then afterwards, there are indications that individuals at McKinsey considered destroying or deleting documents related to their work for Purdue. So I want to just pay a little special attention here. McKinsey proposed a plan for Purdue's exit. McKinsey's a very smart company. They know what they're doing. One of the most world-renowned consulting companies on the planet. Very good. Do you think that they really knew what they were doing here? I do, right? If you're the smartest people on the planet, you would know that. I think you would also probably include in your cost-benefit analysis, in your budget for what this project looks like over the course of 15 years, your legal fees, right? Just like car companies will settle in on an audit or a, what's it called? A recall. You remember that scene from Fight Club? They do a calculation. It's going to kill more people. It's going to be more expensive because of that. We got to do a recall. If it's not going to kill that many people and it costs more to settle than it does to do a recall, they don't do the recall. Here, I would guess that McKinsey factored into their analysis, into their profitability, their legal claims and settling it. They developed an entire exit strategy for Purdue. Do you think that they did not have an exit strategy for them? Do you think that they were not billing Purdue at a level that would justify their costs Were they under litigation? Did they just not think about that? Or is this $573 million settlement just the cost of doing business for them? Is it really a penalty? Or is it just part of the equation? Not to mind the thousands of dead people, if not more than that, tens of thousands of dead people, including my younger brother, who got started on the road to death as a result of this, exactly this. My brother broke his wrist, had a number of surgeries, was prescribed oxy and oxy and oxy and oxy and oxy. He had hundreds of pills that were being delivered to him from various doctors, all handing them out like Skittles. When he could not get them anymore, he was already addicted for years. He turned to something harder than that. And that was basically the end of it. 2016, he died by suicide. I'm not alone in that story. It's happening across this country, everywhere, as a result of what took place here. These people are criminals. I have seen and represented a lot of people who have been called criminals. Most of them are not. Most of them are good people who have been charged with crimes. These people are the upper class, business class, CEO, oligarchy individuals who get away with the most heinous crimes in America. They pay a fine, a couple $100 million, and they all skirt away with it. Nobody bats an eye. We're helping the community. We're going to solve the opioid crisis. They were getting rich on both ends of it. And now they're going to get away with paying some money that was already calculated, by my estimation, in their equation. They don't have to acknowledge any responsibility, any wrongdoing. I've got a dead brother. Thousands of other families have dead kids, dead husbands, dead wives, dead sisters. These guys issue a press release.